this is the Carlisle Show. Welcome. We have a great topic today. We're talking about the Winans family, who is a very old Baltimore family. With us today is Steve Walk. He is the great-great-great-grandson of Ross Winans, who was the patriarch of the family in Baltimore, although his family history goes back 5 generations. And with us is Rick Smith. Rick is the Friends of the, he's the director and founder of the Friends of the Orianda House. Edward Heimiller is with us, and Edward is the curator and director, I was going to say director, of the Grand Lodge of the Maryland Museum, which is behind Hunt Valley, if you all know the area. And he also is the consulting museum registrar for the Evergreen House and Library and Johns Hopkins University. So welcome, gentlemen.
The saga really starts in 1796 with the birth of Ross Winans. And this was in a little farming town in northern New Jersey. But as Ross grew up, he had a very strong mechanical bent. He was very good with machines. He was very, very bright. And as railroads were just starting in this country in the mid-1820s, he developed a device to reduce the friction of railroad cars. And he, in 1827, he took this device to Baltimore, which was really the capital of what was, I consider to be America's first high-tech revolution, railroads. One of his best friends early on in the railroading was Major George Whistler. And Whistler was one of the really great railroad designers, laying out the lines. The Russians in the 1830s had decided they were going to build a railroad from Moscow to St. Petersburg.
And they had not had a railroad there before?
No, they had no railroads whatsoever. They hired Whistler. He went over in 1842 to start laying out the lines. They had wanted Ross Winans to go over to build all the locomotives. And we're talking about 200 locomotives and 2,500 railroad cars. Thomas Winans left in early 1843 with a locomotive, actually, that the Tsar had wanted to see and wanted to test. At a diplomatic reception in St. Petersburg, he met this beautiful young European woman, Celeste Ravillon. And it was a whirlwind romance, and in, I think it was August of 1847, while they were still continuing the contract, they got married.
As you'd expect, Thomas Winans, when he comes back to the United States, having just made an immense fortune and a new bride, the first thing he wants to do is bring her the comforts that she knew in Europe. And he had a rather hefty job in doing that for her, being the fact that she had come from Russia, born in Russia, but was of French and Italian royalty. She had actually served as one of the ladies-in-waiting to the Tsarina. So she had quite a lavish lifestyle in Europe. And when he comes to Baltimore, there's really nothing quite suitable for her. So one of the first things he does is he acquires a country estate at that point, which had been built for the McHenry family here in Baltimore, called Fayetteville. It was named after the Marquis de Lafayette for recognition during the Revolution. And the first thing he has done to the house, which was originally a very simple federal house, is essentially quadruples it in size and hires the firm of Nursen and Nelson to create it into an Italian villa, which ends up being a very large, rambling structure. Beside the ice house pavilion, which is more of a gazebo-type structure, they decide to place a copy of the Venus de Milo, which was in the Louvre at that point. It had been discovered in Italy in 1820 purchased for the Louvre collection, so it was one of the more famous statues at the time. By the end of the 19th century, it's actually said to be the most reproduced statue in the United States.
They would summer in their house in West Baltimore, Orianda, on what was called the Crimea estate. They would spend probably almost maybe 3 months during the heat of the season there. And it was mostly designed like an English estate. A lot heavy gardens, urns, pathways for Winans to walk on, and also it was a working farm. The original entrance of the estate was off of Franklin Town Road, which was Franklin Turnpike. So every time you pass an estate, you would have to pay a toll.
Oh.
So, you hit Winans Toll House, and it's actually the largest inner city park east of the Mississippi. 1,216 acres of woods and lake.
The garden statues that were at Alexandroffsky were life-size bronzes, for the most part, of copies of Greek and Roman statues. And when the house came down, the statues stayed there for a little bit and then were quickly moved by the family to the other family's house, Orianda, and were placed in the gardens there. And it wasn't until the 1960s, when the Baltimore City got involved and the property became Leakin Park, that a lot of those statues started to be dispersed, largely for safety concerns and partially to make sure that they would be appreciated. So a lot of them went to institutions everybody knows of and has probably seen, but not realized that's what they were. 2 of the statues were sent to the Baltimore Museum of Art and sit outside I think it's the west entrance of the museum. And then another 2 were sent initially to the Maryland Historical Society. And upon their arrival, the Historical Society quickly declined them due to their size, and they were transferred to Johns Hopkins University, and they were placed at Evergreen and are still in the gardens at Evergreen.
Yeah, these statues are humongous.
They are. They're actually a little larger than life. And
Apollo.
Say Apollo Belvedere, and then you have Minerva at Evergreen. And both of those statues are copies of originals that are now in the Vatican collection in Rome. And then there's the 2 life-size lions that were originally flanking the front door at Alexandroffsky, which were then moved to Orianda and flanked the front door at Orianda, are now in the Baltimore City Zoo, and are one of the more favorite things for parents to photograph their children on.
Yes. And then you have the urn at Silburn that I just learned about.
Yes. So the items have survived, and they're appreciated. They're just the Winans connection is not always.
If I may jump in
known.
just for a moment about the lions, Thomas Winans apparently commissioned the lions in Russia, and to my knowledge, there were 4 of them cast. 2 of them were for the base of the Neva, one of the bridges that crosses the Neva River in St. Petersburg. And they're still there. You can go over there and you can see those lions at the base of that bridge. And then the other 2 Thomas brought back to Baltimore.
Well, the thing that happened was, one day I was standing in the center of the estate and I said, how do I collect it all and put it into one spot without overwhelming everybody? And I started this in 1987. And I started by interviewing neighbors that lived in the area. I've interviewed families that worked on the estate, some of the Irish families that live up in Catonsville now that have worked for the Winans and the Huttons. So there's a few that are still alive, and they would tell me about where certain things were. And so I thought, it's not just about the estate and the family, it's about what created that estate, not only Alexandroffsky downtown, but Orianda.
Rick, if you could give us an idea of Leakin Park and how special it is to Baltimore City.
Well, it's being the largest park in Baltimore City. I mean, there's a lot that goes on there, a lot of groups, and people don't realize it's there, because it's that western tip of Baltimore. And because of groups like Outward Bound, who's this large nonprofit that back in 1985 took it upon themselves to move into these buildings and lease them from the city. That's why they're still there. And the Friends of Gwynns Falls, Leakin Park, and the Matero group that has the meditation space and the nature art on the trail and the Carrie Murray Nature Center. This is what the park is about. You know, there's so many groups in there, no one realizes they're there.
I think the whole thing starts with the city of Baltimore. The city fathers back in the 1820s really made Baltimore the capital of railroads in this country. And our family, the Winans family, we were honored to be a part of that.
Well, Steve and Rick and Edward, it has been a pleasure, and I appreciate your coming here today and talking about the Winans family. We'll see you again.